Cue music. All right. I told you guys I was going to figure out how to do the music. At least I think I did. So I think it played for us. Hopefully it played for you guys too. Welcome in to the Chinese Grand Prix GridRival preview show. I am Ryan along with William here. We're going to provide our recap of Australia and our takes for China. William, how you doing? What'd you think of Australia?
Australia was about as wild as we thought. So many things happening. We saw some pre-race shenanigans. We saw some reliability. We saw some back and forth on the track. We saw Ferrari doing Ferrari things with strategy. And chat's saying they didn't hear the music.
Yeah, hold on. I heard it. So, I mean, that's exciting for me at least. Hold on,
let's take it from the top.
How about now? It says it's playing.
Yeah, that's not coming through for me.
Maybe this. Hold on. We're off to a hot start. Worked that time. I don't know. I clicked the wrong button.
That worked. That worked. All we got it. I got it at least. Did you all get it, chat?
All right.
Chat got it.
Awesome. Now we are officially underway. That is about as bad of a way you could start a show, but I guess that is the charm to this. We are not professionals, as I'm sure you guys are reminded every 20 to 30 seconds based on how we handle this.
Well, I mean, that's not as bad as that's not as bad of a start as Oscar Piastri last week.
That's true. And unlike Oscar Piastri, we can actually continue here. So that is great. Yes, I'm sure we blew out some eardrums for the headphone users. It was all an elaborate setup. But all right, I totally lost my train of thought. We're rolling now. This is awesome.
Yeah, we're talking China. We're talking Australia. Then we're talking China. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had Piastri crashing out on the first lap. We had Hadjar blowing up mid-race. We had Ferrari not even splitting the strategies under virtual safety car. We had just one Cadillac breaking down, the other one making it. We had Alpine running so many laps they might have Aston so many laps they might have nerve damage. I mean, Alpine has brain damage, and we know that. But
I loved Aston pulling the cars in and then going back out and seeing on the graphic like Stroll, Alonso, 15, 20 laps down, and looked like a NASCAR race. It was hilarious.
All we're missing is the number duct tape to the side of the car.
Oh my God. So hopefully if you were able to dodge any of the non-classified drivers, you probably did all right. We had a bunch of people go up the full 2 million, a lot drop the full 2, which was always going to be a lot more variability early in the season, especially when these prices are set so early on months ago. If you guys weren't here last week, these prices were set in January, which is why some of them might look a little weird. They still do, but they are starting to, they will start to stabilize. Yeah, I was fortunate enough to not suffer any of the non-classified drivers. And because of that, lineup did pretty well, almost 10 million extra in value now. So a little bit of luck, some skill, I like to at least claim, but yeah, definitely some luck there.
I had Piastri, so that sort of bit me. Still had a decent week, but yeah, not leading the week right now just because other people had drivers who actually started the race, and I didn't have one. So yeah, a lot of people have 10 million this week, but I think China is going to be a different story.
Sprint weekend. So
yeah, sprint weekend. So we're locking down tonight at sprint qualifying.
Yes,
get those lineups in.
That is the big message of the show. We lock down at 3:30 a.m. Eastern. So if you're not going to be up at 3:30, make sure you set your lineup before then. Practice is at 11:30 p.m. Eastern tonight. So might be another thing these East Coasters might not stay up for. But if you do, great. Try to take practice into account. It's the only practice session, so that's all we're going to have before lockdown. But if you're not a night owl, you're going to have to set your lineup beforehand, and hopefully we're going to be able to help out with that.
I think I'll watch practice and watch SQ in the morning. I think that's my move.
Yeah, practice should be definitely watch practice. Hopefully you guys can stay up and do that. But yeah, I wouldn't fault anyone for going to bed before sprint qualifying.
Yeah. All right, so how about we get into the drivers for China looking ahead? First tier, George Russell, 29.6 million. Then Verstappen, Lando Norris, and Kimi Antonelli at 25.9. That's our top tier. That's Mercedes, a Red Bull, a McLaren. And what is this tier?
Tier names are back. I told you guys last week I would figure out the music and figure out tier names. Music was a rocky start, but we got there eventually. This is the passing of the torch tier. You have Lando and Max, Lando defending champion, Max, a bunch of championships in a row. But now this might be the Mercedes show based on what we saw last week and what I think a lot of us expect to see again this week in China. So torch has been passed maybe to the Mercedes team.
Yeah, I still like Russell and Antonelli this week. No reason to think Mercedes won't be any slower, or no reason to think Mercedes will be slower this week. It was kind of interesting after the last race. Russell had mentioned that he had started the race with a dead battery. I'm curious how that start goes if their battery's fully charged, if he has to go back and forth with Leclerc, or if he would have just pulled out a nice lead. So there was that bit to it. Other thing would be Kimi Antonelli salvaging second place. He kind of has Max to thank for it. He was potentially not going to make qualifying, and then Max crashed in Q1, gave us a red flag, which gave them the minutes they needed to fix the car. I had actually taken Antonelli out of my lineup after that practice crash. So yeah, the team I ended up running had Russell instead of Antonelli for those curious. But we'll recap the lineup as though I had Antonelli. Still like Antonelli, has room to grow, could finish second place once again. I think he'll win some races this year. The one question long term is if they make any rule changes in the next few rounds that might nerf the Mercedes a little bit, because they are already talking about changing rules around power deployment, and compression ratios will come later in the year. And yeah, so Mercedes for now the best. We'll see if anybody catches up. The Ford engine actually looks pretty good. We saw Racing Bulls do quite nicely. We saw Verstappen. I want to see what Verstappen does if he doesn't crash out of Q1, which may have been a software glitch that caused that lockup. So, yeah, reliability continues to be a thing. We saw one blow. We saw Hadjar lose an engine. And so Verstappen, I think, is still a little bit overpriced, but I think Verstappen is a viable choice. Lando Norris, I think McLaren has a little bit of work to do, honestly. McLaren, a little bit off, probably even off of Ferrari, I think. So I think Norris is another one. I'm less interested in him right now. If I wanted McLaren, I'd still rather have Piastri. Maybe he'll keep the car in one piece to the start of the race, and they'll at least get last place points this time.
Yeah, I have zero interest in Norris, especially at this price. And like you said, if you're a McLaren believer, I think the play is to go Piastri at what is potentially a discount now after crashing out at his home Grand Prix. That was pretty brutal to watch. But yeah, for me, I think McLaren is pretty squarely behind the other three teams, being Mercedes, Red Bull, and Ferrari. Yeah, you cannot go wrong. I think with Russell and Antonelli, there's a solid gap in pace between them and anybody else. I expect if the race runs clean, expect them 1-2 again. Antonelli is cheaper than Russell. Antonelli's a great ad. But yeah, I didn't have Antonelli in my lineup, but I would have pulled him as well after that FP3 crash. I am shocked he was able to get back out there. Pretty incredible effort by that team. And obviously the Max crash helped. Yeah, I do have some interest in Verstappen. I still, like you said, probably still on the expensive side, but there is some upside there just based on we haven't seen him on the grid where we expect to see him race in and race out. He got through most of the back markers, the mid pack without too many issues. And then couldn't pass Lando, which I was a little surprised by. I thought he was going to get to him. But he was unable to. But I think if he starts up front, then he's going to be in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, and with this sprint weekend, I am going to bias towards getting drivers who can finish a race up front, since drivers score points for sprint finish, constructors don't. You win the sprint, that's going to be 22 points, 1 point for 20 seconds, fill in the gaps in between those spots. So a little bit more point value on drivers this week. So for that reason, I'm leaning towards taking Mercedes drivers rather than Mercedes constructor.
Agreed.
Yeah. So I think we're ready for the next tier.
Let's do it.
So these are the rest of the drivers who are above talent eligibility. Those would be Charles Leclerc, Oscar Piastri, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, Pierre Gasly from 24.5 to 18.3 million. And which tier is this?
The let's get it started tier. I think all eyes are going to be on these guys for the start of the race. 2 Ferraris, obviously, their big storyline is that they're able to start better than everybody else. Oscar Piastri famously did not even start the last race, so everyone's going to hope that he can even get to the grid this time. Alonso, Aston Martin, nobody knows what they're doing, so I kind of just threw him out. And Gasly's off to a pretty solid start in that Alpine. He was better than I expected him to be.
Yeah, Gasly, I think, was the biggest surprise. I'm still not interested in taking Gasly, but no. I thought he'd be in the talent tier this week, and he broke even between the problems in front of him and his ability, at least, to kind of keep up.
Yeah, I think the best way to start this tier is just probably, I would assume you agree that Alonso and Gasly are total cross-offs.
Yeah, everyone look at the shirt I'm wearing. I never thought that this would actually be a current thing again. Like this is a nod to hashtag places Alonso would rather be, which the last time he was Honda powered, like this was the result. You're just kicking back in a chair, like with the cars on the side of the road during practice. So yeah, that's still a thing. Like history is a flat circle, or time's a flat circle, I guess.
I'm actually rewatching True Detective season 1 right now. Time is a flat circle. But yeah, Gasly, while I think we can both agree, very impressive, he is not worth signing at above talent level tier. So he's pretty much a cross-off at price. And then obviously Alonso, Stroll, Aston as a whole should be nowhere near your roster. Please don't sign them.
Yeah. So let's talk about the drivers who might actually be signable. So it'd be Leclerc, Piastri, and Hamilton. Last year, Piastri won the race, and the Ferraris both got thrown out for plank wear, and that's when things sort of derailed for them, I think, as a team. And also, my night derailed rescoring all that. That was quite the night, let me tell you. Glad I don't have to be up this year for China. It's someone else's problem this year.
It's always something with China. At the worst times and weird things happen. I hate China weekend, but we're here and we're doing it.
Yeah. Why can't they be closer to Iran? Like, why can't we lose that round? Why do we have to maybe lose Bahrain and Saudi Arabia?
Moving on.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Leclerc, Piastri, Hamilton. I think if Ferrari continues to have a start advantage, like we saw, like if they didn't mess up the strategy last week, I think we see Ferrari potentially fighting for the win, as it was their 3rd and 4th. Right now, best of the rest is how they're looking. So I think Leclerc, Hamilton still have some room to grow. They definitely still have upside. Piastri, the thing is, it's the car, right? If the McLaren is behind the Ferrari, why am I taking Piastri if it's between him or a Ferrari? And I would say that Max is probably ahead of him right now as well. That said, maybe McLaren has figured some stuff out in the past week with the Mercedes power unit. Supposedly, the customer teams didn't quite have the same software as the factory team last week. We'll see how quickly McLaren improves their fortunes, if at all. We've seen this before. We've seen McLaren improve as the season goes on before. I'm not sure if 1 week's going to be quite enough time, though. So I think Piastri's a hold. I don't know that he's necessarily a buy or a drop, but like he feels like a hold right now. I had him last week, so I'm going to hold him this week. I like Ferrari better.
I like Ferrari a lot, especially at price, cheaper than both the Mercedes, especially Hamilton down at 22, I think is a really good look. And with it being a sprint weekend, I know there's a lot of people, so this is not a unique thought by any means or an original thought, but I do agree with it. Mercedes could be extremely strong in the sprint. just based on how well they get off the grid on the start. Shorter race, they should be fine. They have the pace in qualifying too to potentially be second row. So I'll be on the lookout if they're going to qualify P3, P4. There's a very decent chance that they end up leading the first couple laps. And then maybe you don't see them fight as much, the Mercedes fight as much like they would in the actual race. So we'll see if they're able to stay ahead. I think as long as race pace, I still feel like Mercedes is the team to beat. I don't know if Ferrari can stay ahead of them for a whole race, even if they do get out ahead. But they are definitely going to be live in the sprint, most likely. It will be extremely interesting to see where the Red Bulls qualify. Hadjar obviously was great last weekend. Max was not. You have to imagine if Hadjar has the pace to go P3, Max can do that as well. Maybe not catch the Mercedes, but if Red Bull gets on that second row, as good as Ferrari's been at the start, it's going to be very tough to go from the third row up to the front into turn one. It's probably impossible. But if they're on the second row, they are extremely live to win the sprint.
Yeah, which Anhawk's pointing out in the chat, Hamilton won the China sprint last year. That was like the one good thing Hamilton did with Ferrari last year. Maybe history repeats itself there. So yeah, Ferrari, it sounds like Ferrari pretty good. Piastri, okay. Alonso, do not touch. Gasly, don't touch him. Like if you made me pick between the two, I pick Gasly, but I'm not touching either of them.
Definitely Gasly over Alonso, but I just don't see a way Piastri makes it on to a roster if Hamilton's cheaper than him. I think Hamilton's the better play all around. I guess if you already have Piastri, it might not be worth paying a drop fee. I might actually consider paying a Piastri drop fee to get Hamilton.
Interesting thought.
I'm just high on the Ferraris this weekend. I haven't seen anything in McLaren to make me think that they're going to crack the podium. I think Ferraris can end up on the podium.
Now I already own Leclerc, which slightly puts me off of dropping Piastri for Hamilton, just because I like to have a little diversification, especially when reliability is a question mark. I think another thing I could do, like if I'm gonna drop Piastri, it's going to be to pick up who I think is the talent driver of the week, which I think takes us into our next tier, which will be the top 5 talent eligible drivers. Isaac Hadjar, spoiler, my guy for this week. Lance Stroll, Liam Lawson, Carlos Sainz, and Alex Albon. 17.6 to 13.9 million. Which tier is this?
This is the airplane safety demonstration tier. They do that before every flight. They tell you to pay attention. Nobody ever pays attention. And that's how simple this tier is. You probably don't need to pay attention to us at all for the next few minutes, because we're just going to say Hadjar is the talent driver and should be signed on every team. And I'm sure most of you people have already come to that conclusion as well, as we see in the chat. So this is kind of the useless safety demonstration part of the program.
Yeah, definitely Hadjar. Definitely Hadjar. If you don't take a talent driver from this tier, it's Behrman or it's Windblad. Like, I think the only talent driver among these 5 drivers is Hadjar. Qualified great and was doing okay until he lost his engine last week. So, yeah, I see no reason not to take him again unless you really, for some reason, don't trust Ford. Lance Stroll, that's he's there. He's on the grid. That's really all I have to say about him.
He might not be there. We don't even know. He won't be on the grid for long if he is there.
Yeah, maybe the Honda decides to call it quits even before the start of the race.
Well, it'll be, because that's the thing too. They basically sat out the practice sessions because they didn't want to deal with it.
And they didn't have spare parts.
And, now it's sprint qualifying. It's sprint. Like, these aren't 3 practice sessions this weekend. It's just 1. I don't really know how Aston's handling this weekend, but obviously want no part of them. And please don't sign them, anybody here.
Yeah, I'm not interested in Aston whatsoever myself. Liam Lawson. Well, okay, now we can actually talk about somebody. Racing Bulls was okay. I think Windblad is a better driver than Lawson. I think maybe we should start the countdown until Lawson gets replaced. see if they have somebody to replace him mid-season or if they wait until next year. Yeah, so Lawson, like I think Lindblad's the better choice. The Racing Bulls is not a terrible car. Williams continues to be overweight. I think Sainz and Albon are not going to do a whole lot beyond where they are right now. Like I think they're just outside the points right now. I think it's Racing Bulls and it's Haas for best of the rest. And then you have Williams and Alpine in the next tier. And then okay, and Audi as well. Audi actually scored points with Bortoletto. So I stand corrected. I think it's Haas, Racing Bulls, and then Audi, and then Williams, Alpine, and then I forgot the team. Then you have Cadillac, then you have Aston.
Yeah.
Like
well,
Aston,
apparently the Astons have more pace than Cadillac. Cadillac can run laps though. Cadillac can finish the race potentially. Aston cannot. I mean, Aston probably outqualifies Cadillac, assuming they can get on the grid.
Yeah, assuming they qualify, which last week Lance Stroll was racing on Stewart's discretion because at no point during the entire weekend did he set a time within 107% of anybody. And they let him race, which was, but in modern F1, like they're not going to use that rule in modern F1. That rule was meant for teams like HRT or Super Agori that are not serious, and not serious teams aren't allowed on the grid anymore. Like
I like that. And we should start calling it the Lance Stroll rule. I like that. That is.
We're going to rechristen the 107 rule. Now it's the Lance Stroll rule. They let him race anyway. It was called the Delatraz rule back in the day. Jean-Denis Delatraz is one of the reasons this rule exists.
Oh, and I didn't notice this somehow username, not Logan Sargent in the chat. So that probably is Logan Sargent actually watching our show, which is awesome. We got Logan Sargent and some Lance Stroll love in here, as always, every week. Don't worry about it. But yeah, as far as this tier goes, it's Hadjar. I would sign him even if he wasn't talent eligible, like around these prices. If he was 18, 19, like he probably still was worth a sign. But he's talent driver eligible, so do it. Probably a longer term deal too, because if he does have something unfortunate happen to him, he will again be the best talent driver selection for the next race, and you won't want to be locked out of him. So I'll sign him for at least a couple races. Not entirely sure how many yet, but he is on the team, and he will be a talent driver this weekend almost certainly. Yeah, we talked about Stroll. We don't need to beat that dead horse. Lawson is fine. Lindblad's better and cheaper in our game, so like we'll get to Lindblad, but I don't know why you would sign Lawson over him. And I'm just out on the Williams right now. I think they have some room to come down in price. They are still overweight. They might be a factor coming up here in a little bit, but I don't really want them anywhere near my team for China.
Yeah, and some questions about contract lengths. There's, of course, the possibility that Bahrain and Saudi Arabia don't happen. Those are the next two races. We do have Japan before those. But what happens then? So the precedent for this was 2 years ago when Imola was flooded out and that race was canceled. So that race just didn't exist and the contracts did not run. Like it was as though that race was never even on the calendar. So if you have a deal that goes through, what's the second one? Saudi Arabia? I think that's the second one. If you had a contract that went through Saudi Arabia, it would now go through Canada. The two races after Saudi Arabia being Miami and then Canada, which will be
basically they just don't count.
Yeah, which by the way, Miami and Canada, both sprints this year. So this is actually kind of interesting. Like you potentially go from not a sprint to a sprint. And so what I did was just like the guys that I really, really wanted last week, I just took them for 5 races. Like whatever I get, I get. If I have them out for one of the sprints, there's 2 other drivers that I can take that I can live with for a week, which is how I'm taking this.
Yeah, I probably should have thought more about those races getting canceled when I did contract lengths. I did not do that. I just kind of assumed the F1 would push through and we would be racing drone strike or not, but who knows?
What I've seen is that Jeddah has been begging to stay on the schedule, but the logistics are somehow intertwined as far as getting things shipped over great distances. I haven't heard anything about Formula 2 yet. Supposedly they had to decide sooner. Because supposedly their freight goes to the Middle East even sooner. The talk right now is if they canceled those races, they wouldn't line up any replacements. World Endurance beat them to it with Imola taking the place of, I think it's Qatar for them next month. And I think Imola was like the first alternate. I think they were thinking of Imola more if Madrid wasn't ready for some reason this fall, which hopefully it is.
Yeah, so definitely sounds like no reschedule. So we may just have a little mini F1 break, which
we get spring break. We have summer break. We get spring break. Head down to wherever you prefer to enjoy spring break and celebrate, I guess. All right, next here we have Gabriel Bortoleto, Oliver Behrman, Esteban Ocon, and Nico Hulkenberg from 12.5 to 9.8 million. The Audis and the Haas's. And which tier is this?
World War III. The war is hot in the streets right now, as we were talking about canceled races. And here we have a USA versus Germany battle with Audi and Haas. It's actually really interesting. I think I said in our last show, it's a huge pivot point in lineups. If you are a believer in Haas or Audi, they are similarly priced. They both have looked pretty strong. They're both interesting. I think I still lean Haas. I think I said that last week, especially with Behrman. I'm still there, but I have been impressed by Bortoleto, and I would say Hulkenberg, but he didn't even race. So, but I think he'll be fine. He's kind of at a discount now. So that's what makes him interesting. It's just he's cheaper than the rest of these guys because of his did not start.
Yeah, it didn't start due to a power unit issue. Just like Piastri, if a driver doesn't start a race, they get 0 points for the race. If you don't run a qualifying, you get 0 points for qualifying. If you don't set a times lap in qualifying is the rule. For those who had Max, he didn't set a times lap, so that's why he got 0.
The Lance Stroll rule.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting tier. I do like Haas better than Audi. I think the Ferrari power unit's more of a known quantity. I think Behrman's a pretty good driver. And I like Behrman out of this tier. You could consider him for talent driver. Somebody was asking if I had any regrets about taking him for one race. When the Antonelli thing happened, I actually extended Behrman. I took Russell for one race. And then I could come down to Antonelli this week, and have money for that. So I actually do have Behrman a bit longer than I was expecting, but I wouldn't have regrets. I'd be happy to sign Ocon and run with him. I do like Behrman a little bit better.
All 4 of these drivers are signable. You might even use multiple in this tier because they are at a pretty affordable price. Behrman's my favorite. Bortoleto's great. Ocon looked really good. I'm surprised he wasn't able to get by Gasly to finish in the points last week. That seemed like he was going to get him, and Gasly just held him off. I think we saw a couple. Once drivers figured out how to deploy the battery and race around these tracks, like Max couldn't catch Lando and Ocon couldn't catch Oka couldn't catch Gasly. That's what it is, despite probably both of them having faster cars, not being able to get around. So that could be interesting to look out for.
If you decide you want to load up on Mercedes and a Ferrari, you are looking at this tier to round out your lineup. You don't really have extra money for that. You're taking probably one of these guys and Lindblad and Haas, and that's probably your lineup. If you're doing 2 Mercedes and Hamilton, I think that fits. Yeah, if you have more budget to play with, if you have more than 100 million because you had a good week last week, maybe you take 2 of these drivers out of this tier.
Mm-hmm. And Behrman can definitely be considered for talent driver if you're looking to go a little contrarian. Hadjar is probably by far the best choice. But again, if your whole league is picking Hadjar and he has an issue and you have Behrman, you're going to make up a lot of ground and extend a lead because that'd be huge. Yeah, but at the same time, if you're not banking on DNFs, Hadjar is the best and should put up the most points.
Yeah, you have Yeah, you have three choices of talent driver this week, I think. You have Hadjar, you have Behrman, you have Windblad. And you could justify any of them. On a sprint weekend, I like Hadjar, Windblad, Behrman in that order because I do think that's the order as far as where you're going to finish in the sprint. Like I think Hadjar will have the best sprint finish, which will be a few extra points. I forget the improvement index on Behrman. I think Windblad's was lower. So
Windblad's
I think
definitely
Windblad will score more improvement points. Like I think Hadjar, I think Windblad has the most improvement point potential. I think Hadjar has the most sprint point potential and finish position potential. I like Behrman and Windblad better if we're thinking about beating teammate.
Yeah, and another thing too is with a talent driver, you really want to avoid any sort of wreck, any sort of DNF, any sort of total disaster. I do like Hadjar, assuming he's going to start further up the grid and be away from more of the chaos and idiocy. We did not have any issues. No one crashed going into turn one in Australia. Shockingly, we had a few cars slow to get away. We had a few really close calls, but at the end of the day, I still think these starts are extremely sketchy.
Yeah, Lawson almost got clobbered.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys saw the video that's making the rounds where Colapinto had to dodge Lawson at the last moment.
That was a hell of a move. That was impressive. And I am really surprised we didn't see any big problems, but it's definitely more of a possibility in China than it is for most races like we've seen last year. I think for at least the beginning of the season, you're going to see some sketchy moments on the start. And further up you start, probably the more you're able to avoid it. So that's another reason I lean Hadjar, because Behrman and Lindblad could obviously be great, but if you're P9, P10, you are right in the middle of things.
And Mark's also reminding us Behrman has 10 penalty points and they don't start disappearing until May. So if he picks up a couple of points, he's going to catch himself a race ban, and just be aware of that. I'm probably not going to think about that too much, and if I have to drop him because there's going to be a sub, I have to drop him. So that's my thinking there. I still like Behrman just fine. Just there is a slightly higher risk. My understanding is if you do pick up the 2 penalty points, the ban would happen the next race weekend. It would not happen if he got 2 points in the sprint, he's not going to miss the race. He's going to miss the next weekend.
Yeah, you're not going to get completely screwed. You'll have time to drop him. I think that's right. Unless he does something maybe extremely egregious like in the sprint,
where they just give you a race ban instead of the 2 points. So the stewards can do that. That's not a thing that really happens these days, but they can give you a race ban. The last one I remember is when Grosjean drove over Alonso and almost took his head off. He got a ban for that.
Oh, man.
Yeah. What was I saying? Yeah. I also won't have to furiously press buttons to make the substitution happen at the last second. Been there, done that. All right. Last driver tier. Franco Colapinto, Arvid Lindblad, Sergio Perez, Valtteri Bottas, 6.7 to 4.5 million. Which tier is this?
This is the oven broke on Christmas tier. If you got to go out to dinner on Christmas, the only place you can go is Chinese restaurants, Chinese Grand Prix. Arvid Lindblad is the only person in this tier open for business. I would not sign anyone from this tier except Lindblad. So he's your Chinese restaurant.
Just Lindblad, and he's probably your talent driver.
Yeah, and we have talked about Behrman, Lindblad, Hadjar as the talent options. I think those are clearly the top 3, but I think I'll also have all 3 on my lineup no matter what. So they're all great to sign no matter what and make one talent driver.
I had Lindblad as talent driver last week. Behrman actually ended up being a slightly better talent driver. Behrman outscored him by a few points, but both excellent choices. I also had Haas as my constructor. I didn't want as much exposure to Haas. Imagine if Behrman had a problem. That would triple screw me instead of double screwing me. If he would have been talent. And if I have to get screwed, I only want to get screwed once. And Piastri did that. So Yeah. Windblad, yes. Everyone else, no. Somewhere between no and hell no.
Yeah, Colapinto is no, and the Cadillacs are hell no.
Yeah. Perez finished the race at least. We can give him that. He was the last car running. If we don't count the Aston, well, he was the last classified car running. The Astons, they were not classified. They may have been running. They were not classified. You have to run at least 90% of the race to be classified.
What, 15 laps, 14 laps back? It was a funny number seeing that on on the scoring tower.
Yeah. So somebody asking what's the driver's salary for this season? I'm actually just pulling that up now. The highest the driver's salary can go is 34 million. The lowest it can go is 400,000. For constructors, those numbers are 30 million and 4 million. And yeah, you can find that if you go to the information and help screen in your app, like your league settings, information and help, and you hit scoring. You can get the scoring rules. You can get the salary rules, and do with that as you please. Yeah, so hopefully that answers the question. How do penalty points with Behrman impact signing him? You just have to be slightly nervous that he could get a race ban.
I'm not really considering it. Could happen. I am not going to consider that in terms of signing Behrman. I'm going to sign him, and if I have to drop him, so be it. But I wouldn't stray away from Behrman just because of the penalty points. I think he is a really strong driver, especially at this price.
Do we think Williams or Sainz rebounds in the next 3 weeks? I don't think so. That car is very heavy, and they're not going to cut that weight overnight, especially when we're in the middle of flyaway races.
Couple months from now, Williams is going to be a target because they will probably be extremely cheap, and they will be turning the corner. I mean, ideally for them at least. But until then, I'm just going to wait on Williams until we see actual improvement. There's no point in rostering them at this price.
Maybe Miami, probably not until Europe. But if we start to talk about serious upgrades, that's we usually see that when they get to Europe, and that'll be beginning of June this year. Like you have you got these Asian races, and then you have theoretically the Middle Eastern races in April, and then you have the 2 North American races in May, and then they get to Europe at last, the heart of the season.
I think we got Canada on Indy 500 day.
Yeah, instead of Monaco starting our day, we have Canada sliding in between Indy and Charlotte for those of us who are glued to all 3 races that
won't be this. It will still be an awesome day, but it is going to feel a little weird not waking up and having Monaco in the morning.
Yeah. On to constructors.
Really quick, I see a question about overall philosophy on releasing drivers. Early in the season, I don't like to do it just because I'm really focused on building value. If you stick around with us when we get kind of later season and the focus shifts to points, I was releasing drivers almost every week coming down the stretch. So like I'm not afraid to do it, especially if they're lower priced, unless there's something extremely concerning. Like if you had Alonso or Stroll, I don't know why you would, but I would release them in a second and pay the fee. Or like if Lindblad looked horrible and it's just like the practice sessions were all fake and you just seem to be a problem, you can release him and it's cheap. If I had a Williams, I would probably release them too, because why not? Yeah. I'm willing to pay the fees if something's going to be really bad, but I will tend to stick with a driver early in the season just because I don't want to hurt that team value.
Yeah, if somebody's looking particularly bad, I'll drop them early season. Or if there's somebody who looks that much better, like if somehow I had slept on a Lindblad or a Behrman and my lineup's full, I may drop somebody to go get one of those guys who has a lot more upside. Early season, I will tend to stagger the contracts a little bit so that I have somebody coming off and I can make that pivot without eating a drop fee.
Right. Like if I had like Hulkenberg as my cheapest driver, I believe Hulkenberg can be strong this weekend, but I would strongly consider dropping him just to fill him with Lindblad. And so it really is kind of a 2 parts to the equation, just the driver and who are you dropping them for? Because you can gain some salary in the bank. you're paying a little bit of a fee, but at the same time, you're getting a probably better driver on the cheaper side that you can roster to a long-term contract.
Yeah, we got a few lineup questions we'll get to after we get through these constructors. First up, we've got Mercedes, McLaren, Ferrari, Red Bull, 28.8 to 22.4 million. And we don't tier the constructors. We don't give them names. We do put them into groups, though. On a sprint weekend, I'm not really looking to sign an expensive constructor. If you told me I had to take one of these constructors, probably Ferrari will get you the most points per dollar spent. Mercedes will get you the most points overall since they're favorites the 1-2 qualifying and the race. Again, no sprint points for constructors. I think Ferrari's going to be a slightly more efficient use of your money, free up some budget to sign some drivers who are going to net you a little bit more. Remember, though, the goal is not to spend all the money.
Yeah, I'm away from all of the top tier constructors just because it's a sprint. But I do agree with William that if I'm going to spend money, it's going to be Ferrari. Mercedes is just too expensive. They likely go 1-2, but that is a heavy price to pay, especially when there are still reliability questions. It's not crazy to think that, we still have teams just dropping off the grid. McLaren, I've said I don't really like McLaren at all, so I definitely don't want them at this price. Red Bull's interesting, but I think you're going to get some more consistent results from Ferrari.
Yeah, Ferrari, I think, has been more reliable, and they were also running wheel-to-wheel with Mercedes early in that race.
Yeah,
Red Bull hasn't done that yet.
Yeah, all things that I would take Red Bull over Mercedes and McLaren because they're cheaper. But I think I would rank them Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, McLaren in terms of my willingness to sign from this tier.
Yeah, sounds right. I pretty much agree with that. Next tier would be Racing Bulls, Aston Martin, Williams, and Alpine, 17.4 to 14.2 million. What are your thoughts?
Racing Bulls is the only constructor I'd look at in this tier. I think they're too expensive. I would rather have Haas at half the price, which we'll get to in the next tier. They're just kind of in that weird middle ground. Like if I'm looking at spending money on a constructor, I might try and just spend up a little bit and get Ferrari or Red Bull, or I'm going cheap. The Racing Bulls just doesn't really fit into how I want to construct my lineup, but they're the only ones I'd look at here because we all know Aston Martin is not getting on any lineup. Williams, I've said I really don't like Williams, and Alpine is fine, but again, like you can get cheaper constructors who are going to finish a lot better, like Audi and Haas instead of Alpine.
Yeah, Racing Bulls is the only team that I would. If you made me sign one of these four, I would take Racing Bulls. I don't want to sign any of these four, but
yeah,
if I had to take one, it would be Racing Bulls. And if you told me to get rid of one, it would be Aston. So
it's not exactly the toughest exercise.
Yeah, and then bottom tier we have Audi, Haas, and Cadillac, 9.8 to 7.3 million. For me, it's Haas all the way. I think Audi is also potentially signable, but I think Haas is going to outperform Audi. But I think Audi is going to outperform where they're ranked right now. They were faster. It's still just a reliability question. We saw one of them not even start the race last week. But it's a new power unit. That's the only question mark there.
Yeah, but even with the 3 million gain, Haas still is valuable. They still are my top constructor. Audi's second out of all of them, just purely because of the price, and I think they'll be strong as well. Cadillac they're so slow. Don't sign Cadillac, don't sign Aston, don't sign really anyone except Audi, Haas, or a top tier if you're going to spend the money on it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Hopefully Cadillac finds some pace during the season. This is definitely not, Haas's debut where Haas scored double points their first race. Cadillac's got some work to do.
Cadillac will be impressive if they both finish and they're not the last classified finishers. I have a hard time. I don't see any way that they're not last classified if they do finish the race. They are so far behind pace on everyone on this grid, Aston Martin included.
Yeah, hopefully when we get to the middle of the season, they're a bit more competitive. But right now, I don't think so. Now, so we'll run through my 100 million lineup and then we'll answer some questions. So last week, the 100 million lineup that I gave on the show was Leclerc, Piastri, Antonelli, Behrman, Lindblad, Talent Driver, and Haas. And they scored a collective. Why isn't my spreadsheet doing its thing? One moment, please. We're live. We're so live. 985 points. In my actual lineup, I swapped Antonelli for Russell because Antonelli was maybe going to miss qualifying. And if not for Verstappen, he would have missed qualifying. Piastri was the one guy that burned me last week, but otherwise a solid lineup. And this week, we have some familiarity here. This is a $97.5 million lineup. We have Russell, Leclerc, Hadjar, Behrman, Lindblad, Talent Driver, and Haas once again. And that's 97.5. You could take Antonelli if you want to target value gain a little bit more than raw points. These I tend to build slightly more towards raw points. So Russell will get you a few more points. I think Antonelli will get you a bit more value gain, given improvement points being a thing. And Antonelli would have a massive day if Russell, for some reason, had a problem. So that's the lineup right now. I'm sure a lot of lineups are going to kind of look like this for the next couple of rounds.
Yeah, I was just looking at what my lineup looks like right now, and I didn't have anyone roll off. So this is actually another example of we were talking about when you would drop a driver. I don't have Hadjar in my lineup, and I want Hadjar to be my talent driver. So that by process of elimination, I have to cut somebody to make room for Hadjar, and I will happily do that just because I think Hadjar's potential is so high as talent driver, and I doubt he'll be in that tier for long. So even though I like everyone on my lineup and wouldn't normally cut them, like I'm going to pay a drop fee because the upside to having Hadjar, I believe, is extremely high and worth to sacrificing some of the funds.
Yeah, there is a chance that I cut Piastri this week and go Hadjar. It's going to come down to how practice looks tonight. Chris actually asking that very question: would you drop Piastri for Hadjar? If practice is looking like the way things went last week, I think the answer is yes.
Yeah,
I think Hadjar is going to have more upside for sure, and potentially he's going to have more performance than Piastri. We'll see tonight. And so I expect Hadjar to be the McLaren. I think it's possible.
I do. I think
it's at least 50-50.
Yep. I think as long as because if he didn't have problems, he would probably, I don't think Lando was going to catch him. But yeah, McLaren probably have the edge on reliability, assuming their drivers know how to drive around the track beforehand. But yeah, I think Hadjar is going to have more pace than both of the McLarens, and I think he'll finish above both of them.
And supposedly Piastri had some kind of surge from the hybrid system when he crashed. So there was another software gremlin.
Yeah, that was, I forgot exactly what it was, but something happened with Max's qualifying lap too.
Yeah,
the cars are revolting. That's probably not a great sign if that's happening. Maybe it's a good thing that the cars can't go fast on straights, because if the car malfunctions, they'll crash at a slower speed.
Yeah, maybe that was the trick. That's why we're super clipping. That sounds like a Twitch incentive of some kind. Hey, thanks for the super clip. Yeah, we got to come up with better names for these things.
I'll tell you what wasn't a super clip was me trying to figure out the music to start the show, and hearing the music and thinking it's going. I'm the only one dancing. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, nobody clipped that.
Yeah.
All right, so we got some lineup questions. Lindblad as talent over Hadjar. I think you could go either way. I personally am thinking Lindblad right this second, but practice might tell me to go with Hadjar tonight. Hadjar has the edge, I think, on sprint points, but not by as much as you think. We saw Lindblad finish in the points last week, like legitimately finish in the points.
Yeah, so, I had Lindblad as talent last week. There is a part of me that thinks it's playing with fire, going with a rookie as talent driver. It's, he could still bin it on a qualifying lap or something like that. He is still a rookie. He looks fast. He has a great price in our game, but there is always a little added downside with the guy who really hasn't proven it.
Yeah, Behrman, Anthrox pointing towards Behrman's performance in China last year. Behrman was in the points last year in China. Yeah, Behrman's a viable choice too. Like we talked about, what about Hadjar and Lindblad? Behrman's a perfectly viable choice too. But we can only pick one.
It's going to be so hard not to have all three on a line. Like they're all great choices for even both talent driver and just having on the roster. I think they're standouts at all of their price tiers.
Yeah, Lindblad has been very impressive so far. Let's see. We answer that one? If you want a full lineup, Discord's probably the best place to do that. You can get to our Discord through the app. A lot of people happy to tell you how to spend 110 million. If you have 110 million to play with, you probably had somebody better than Piastri last week, unlike me. I have a little bit less than that. You're probably looking at least one Mercedes, at least one Ferrari, and then all the good talent drivers we mentioned who are going to give you value, and they're going to give you a ton of points.
This isn't interesting. Would you sell Leclerc to go Hadjar? I probably wouldn't, because this person's lineup has Behrman and Lindblad on it, and I think those are both perfectly serviceable talent drivers.
Leclerc's fine to have.
Yeah, and that's a pretty hefty drop fee for someone. If it was a McLaren, like if you said Lando, I'd say maybe eat the drop fee and just go for it. But I expect Leclerc to be extremely strong this weekend. There's no reason why he shouldn't be a podium contender in both the sprint and the race and qualify well and everything. He should be theoretically P3, I would think. He's probably the most likely P3 finisher and has a chance in the sprints to win it.
Yeah, his ceiling is probably about second. I think Hadjar's ceiling is probably about fourth or fifth. Yeah, barring problems in front of him. If people in front of him have problems, great.
That's the other thing. It's like you get boosted up. Like, I mean, Perez finishes 16th because, you have all of these did not starts, DNFs, people running 20 laps off pace, and it bumps everybody up just a tad. Like, that's why Gasly scored in the points. If you take Piastri out, he was going to finish probably P5, P6, P7-ish. Bumps everybody up. So it is a little bit of avoid the landmines and just really hope that no one you have has problems. But that's the way it goes in F1.
Yep. Is it worth it to drop Red Bull so you can pick up Hadjar for the sprint? Now, what constructor are you taking? This is Jack Westbrook's question. What constructor are you taking? If you're going to take Haas, then sure. I think Hadjar and Haas is going to be better than Red Bull and whatever driver is in that spot. You didn't tell us that, but
you get a ton of added lineup flexibility, saving 13, 14 million on a constructor.
Like we said when we were going through constructors, if you had to take a top constructor, Ferrari's the best choice, probably, and then Red Bull's second best, but you're probably much better served taking somebody like Haas, who's going to be a lot cheaper and still give you a good chunk of points for a constructor, and then let you do something with driver. And do something better with your driver. Had Hamilton and Behrman on one race, and then do you want Antonelli with Bortoletto or Ocon, or do you want Hadjar with Bortoletto or Ocon? I think Antonelli has a higher ceiling. If you're good at talent driver, Antonelli. If you are not good at talent driver, Hadjar. And because we didn't mention Ocon as a potential talent driver, I rank him fourth in the talent drivers, behind the three guys we've been talking up all show.
Yeah, and not a slight against Ocon. I think he should be very solid. Just he is firmly behind those other three. They're just so good.
And we can only pick one. Yeah, so last year Ocon outperformed Behrman in China last year, but that was also Behrman's second race in the Haas. Well, as a full-time driver, never mind the sub.
I think it's pretty clear that Behrman is better than Esteban, and I think that gap will continue to grow as Behrman grows. I think we know what Ocon is. We just know what he is. He's fine. He's perfectly an average driver. He's decent in this Haas car, but Behrman's got a much higher ceiling, and I expect him to keep getting closer to that.
Like I said last week, what's going to keep Ocon in F1 is Ferrari taking Behrman to replace Hamilton. That's what's going to keep Ocon in F1. So, yeah. Who else?
Oh, yes, Ollie. I did mention this earlier, but Hadjar should be a multi-race contract just in case something does happen to him and he loses value, which would suck for your talent driver, but then you can use him again. As long as Hadjar is under that talent threshold, he is probably the number one talent driver choice. So the last thing you want is to have him for one race and then get a bad performance and then be locked out of using him the next time. So I'll be signing multi-race, and then by the time he rolls off that, assuming he performs as expected, he'll be out of talent range anyway.
Yeah. Scrolling up, trying to find other questions. Why it was said so people couldn't rejoin the official Discord league? Well, that's how it is for every league, and we'll look into maybe changing that in the future. Like I've noted that as a thing to reevaluate, but that's how it's been. Like I think we're adding a warning actually. Like if you leave a league, like you can't rejoin. Don't expect to be able to rejoin. Sorry if that caused people confusion. I'm also kind of surprised people were leaving leagues and then looking to get back in the leagues. But hey, you know what? The world confuses me sometimes. Let's see. We talked about releasing driver philosophy. C-Roll suggesting just put Windblad on a 5-race contract. So cheap. Yeah.
Yep.
Lindblad 5 races actually is a pretty good idea.
That's the move. Lindblad 5 races and then ride it to a humongous value gain, assuming that this is what he's going to be.
Yeah. You can do the same for Behrman as well if you actually believe in Haas. There was the question, drop Piastri for Antonelli or Russell. I think the answer is yes. Like if the rest of your lineup's good, if you have the money to spare, I think a Mercedes driver would be a massive upgrade over Piastri. Yeah, some talk about dropping Piastri. Like I said, there's a decent chance I drop Piastri tonight. See if I'm awake enough to post in Discord if I do that tonight. Another reason to join the Discord, sometimes I drop thoughts in there randomly.
Yeah, I would recommend with China, just do this before and do this in the next 10 minutes after we sign off the show. Just put a full lineup in. All drivers, constructors, have a talent driver, have something in case you don't make it to sprint qualifying. It's a horrible time zone. Just have something. So if for some reason you do sleep through lockdown, you have a full lineup, you will get talent driver points. I see someone in the chat said they missed talent driver points because they didn't have a 5th driver.
Yeah.
Make sure you don't do that. It does happen to the best of us. Everyone misses lineups every so often, but China is the toughest one. It's an early lockdown. Please put a lineup in.
So have any full lineup and then optimize it after practice if you haven't fallen asleep.
Yeah, set your alarm for 2 a.m. and then you can rework it. But have something just in case. Somebody
asked about an $80 million lineup at the very top of the chat. Yeah, that sounds like a hardcore league gone terribly wrong. You can't actually lose 80 million. You can't actually lose 20 million in 1 week, though.
It's doable with the way that these prices are with Hadjar.
Yeah, like this is the time. So like if you told me I only had 80 million, then Russell probably becomes Russell's 29.6. I'm looking at my 100 million lineup, If I had to cut 17.5, I think
becomes
George
Hamilton.
Russell. Yeah, George Russell probably becomes Gabriel Bortoleto. Done. No, that's not quite enough. He becomes Esteban Ocon.
This is probably one of the only times and one of the only seasons where you could put together a fairly competitive $80 million lineup, just because some of the price bargains we have right now. This would have been an impossible thing to do last year, to have a competitive $80 million lineup. But at least for now, and probably for another couple races, you could legitimately contend with $80 million. I don't recommend it. You should probably be spending more than that. Yeah. But this is an interesting time of the year.
Yeah. And one last question before we go. Can you explain the talent threshold? How does it work? Sure. So any driver valued below 18 million in F1 or our other games, we have an IndyCar game, we have a NASCAR game. If you're below 18 million, you're eligible to be talent driver. You designate a driver as a talent driver, and if your lineup is full, they will score double points. If the driver moves above, or if the driver moves to or above 18 million, then they stop being talent driver eligible. If they're under contract, cool. You'll still have to pick another talent driver, though, that following week, because they're no longer talent driver eligible. If somebody falls below 18 million, they become eligible. You can make them a talent driver, even if you'd signed them previously. Like maybe you had Hadjar and he fell below. Now you can make him talent driver. So that's how that works. So talent driver, long and short of it, talent driver scores double points as long as your lineup is full. Only drivers you can make talent drivers are the ones that are valued below 18 million. Simple as that. And on that note, I think we're out of time for this week. Yep. Hit like if you've enjoyed this. Subscribe and get notifications on if you want to find out every single time we are on the air here. And great hanging out with you, as always. We can keep the conversation going in that GridRival Discord. You can get at that through the app. And thanks a lot for watching. Enjoy the Chinese Grand Prix.
All right, and don't worry, I'll get some stuff on my walls, Mike. I just moved, okay? Just give me a break. But yeah, thank you guys all for tuning in, and I hope everyone has a great China and everyone stays up late, and we will see you guys for Japan.
All right, see ya.